Welcome back. You are watching KTN Newsdesk with me, Akisa Wandera. We're on to a second hour, and we stick with a seeming fallout between Nairobi Governor Mbuvi Sonko and his deputy Polycarp Igathe. The Nairobi County Assembly has confirmed that plans are underway to reconcile the governor and his deputy in a special meeting to be led by Nairobi Senator Johnson Sakaja. This comes as Nairobi Governor Mbuvi Sonko spoke about the resignation publicly for the first time in Mombasa, saying that nothing was beyond dialogue. But what exactly does the resignation mean to the county's business, and what will the ripple effect be on the execution of county plans? And what exactly does the law say about the office of the deputy governor? We're now joined by Dr. Tom Kabau, who is an advocate and a legal consultant, as well as Steve Ogola on my immediate right, who is also an advocate. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me here on KTN News Desk. I would want to begin from where I've just left it off on the latest developments that the county government now confirms that plans are underway to reconcile them. Do you think this is necessary?
Considering that we are at the very initial stage of change of county government, which has not been easy, even for the governor, Sonko, to try and create systems. And again, considering the many years of experience in managing corporates that Polycarp Igathe has, and considering again that one of the factors that made the people of Nairobi to elect Sonko was the fact that he had also somebody with a good management and administration experience. It would be good because it will, for image, the image that will be created that it is the reform agenda that Sonko was selling, it is going to be implemented. If they are unable to be reconciled, we cannot ignore the fact that there are cartels, there are people who might not want systems put into place who are likely to take advantage of that, because the image of failure will have come quite early.
But even if they are reconciled, this has already gone public. He has resigned publicly. For him to take back the job, will it not leave more questions than answers, especially on the minds of those who voted for them?
There are two ways to look at it, and two outcomes are possible. One of them is that this could be a reality check. And the governor himself realizes that if they are not, there is no harmony, it might be difficult to really facilitate or achieve the dream that he had for Nairobi, the programs he wanted to implement, etc. And on the side of Polycarp Igathe, he realizes that, and that's a reality, that he's a deputy to the governor. So he has to be more supportive. And the basis under the Constitution and the law is that he's a deputy. So most of the things he'll have to do at the discretion of the governor. But that does not stop him from advising the governor, bringing up ideas, etc. That's one of the likely options. The second option, of course, is that once the trust has been damaged and the confidence that Sonko would have on his deputy is damaged, it might be impossible to create that environment of trust. And then, therefore, it will certainly affect the delivery of services in Nairobi County.
For you, Steve, he talks about the breach of trust. They're already past that. So then, what happens to business in the county government? What happens to the image that was once looking like the bright future of Nairobi in the mind of the electorate?
I think, Sakisa, I think to this issue about reconciling Igathe with the governor and having him return to office has some significant challenges, especially for Igathe himself, and you must be aware about them, even as the party tries to woo him. The first challenge that Igathe will face now is that he may lose decisional independence, clarity of mind, and he may also lose the integrity of his voice, because I think those are the critical aspects that made him assess the environment in which he's working, and then lead him to the conclusion that he needed to He just needed to resign. Now, if he returns back to office, he may be susceptible to external manipulation. Because then he's back to the office, courtesy of power brokers, you know. That also introduces a second significant angle. You know, if you look at the structural arrangement within the Constitution, Akisa, the county governments are distinct, although interdependent, but they are distinct in terms of functional and decisional operation of the government. If you have significant influence from the national government under the guise of party leadership, influencing decisions and operations of the county government, then that may eventually implicate on the county's ability to deliver on its mandate. So it's a critical balance because Jubilee as a party is a critical stakeholder. Remember, this ticket is a Jubilee ticket.
Yes.
But to what end, to what extent do we say, post the election, now you're not a Jubilee party candidate or governor, you're a governor of the great county of Nairobi, and you owe allegiance to the Constitution. And if you're a deputy governor, you resign because you believe you lack decisional independence or functional independence, then you go and you're not returned by power brokers or party stalwarts, because then that may interfere with the functional assignments within the two levels of government. That is the critical balance. I think it also shows that there's a near collapse of party internal dispute resolution mechanisms. I think someone at the party level should have captured the grievances, if at all, and addressed them before they emerged publicly. But once they emerge publicly, the manner of addressing them has greater implication that goes beyond the Jubilee Party as a whole. So that's my view. In short, I would privilege an approach that allows Governor Sonko to reimagine his government beyond Igathe, because the law can be addressed, can be revised or reworked or amended to allow him to appoint a new deputy, as is already being proposed in the Murkomen bill.
But in his resignation and even in his tweet that he did to Kenyans saying why he was resigning, Polycarp Igathe said that the governor does not trust him, so then this makes it hard for him to continue with his administrative roles. Then this brings us back to the question of what exactly is the role of the deputy governor?
Now, unfortunately, it seems probably Polycarp Igathe probably did not really appreciate the position of deputy governor. But that in itself does not mean that probably he cannot reconcile with that, because under the Constitution, under the law, he's merely a deputy to the governor without a proper portfolio and without proper functions. So he for instance, takes charge of the county executive committee in the absence of the governor. But as long as the governor is there, he's the head of the county executive. What his sentiment was that he has not been given the trust, he has not obtained the trust of the governor so that to champion the administrative and management agenda. As I've already explained, there's no basis for him to head that unless it is at the discretion of the governor. But even from a political perspective, even from the law, is that besides what the law provides, is that accountability lies with the governor. When we write about the Sonko's administration, probably Igathe will not feature. It is the governor. What did he achieve? What did he not achieve? So on that basis, there are certain agendas which Sonko might have difficulty not addressing directly. And then from the history of Sonko, he's a bit abrasive, flamboyant, and which is different from Igathe's approach, which is corporate, more of corporate. So there's that misconception, and if there is going to be reconciliation, Igathe has to appreciate that there is no legal and constitutional basis currently for him to say, these are my duties.
And these are yours.
Yes.
But then the law also seems very
Yes.
quiet about this kind of eventualities. There is a voter out there who thinks, I voted for them as a team because Sonko has this and Igathe brings in this. So where does this leave the voter?
Well, Igathe was an errand boy by the law established, because deputy governors, their main role is to fill the gap should there be need when the governor is away. Either temporarily, they act as so, only to the limited extent permitted. They can't appoint, they can't fire, they can't transfer the CECs, the county executive committees. But when they rise to prominence when the office of the governor becomes vacant. That's when the deputy governor rises to prominence. I think the case of Nairobi is a bit unique because it seems the Jubilee Party negotiated something which is outside the constitution. They negotiated a powerful deputy who will run, who will be the manager, and Sonko acquiesced to that because he said, I'm going to provide the vision and
Bring in the votes.
But Igathe is going to implement. Now, Igathe wanted decisional independence, which is a very limited constitutional construct, because the Constitution considers the role of the deputy merely to perform delegated functions by the governor. In fact, in many counties, the deputy governors, actually even in law, it's not required that the deputy governor necessarily be a holder of a substantive portfolio. So basically, you could sit in the office reading newspapers, waiting for phone calls from the governor, running errands. You're merely an errand boy. But Igathe, because of his high-profile corporate experience, did not imagine that he would be an errand boy. It turns out that Sonko turned him into an errand boy, and it's not Sonko's fault that Igathe turned out to be an errand boy. The law limits what the deputy governor can do. And as Dr. Akabau says, the deputy, ultimately, the person who will account to the people is the governor. If no matter how hardworking the deputy is, it is the governor that will take credit. Just like the presidency, the ultimate responsibility, the buck stops with the president. Irrespective of how excellent the deputy is, or lazy the deputy is, it is for the president to innovate around the deputy, the kind of deputy that he has, and find a formula that works for them. So I think that experiment, if it was an experiment Jubilee was initiating, of pairing politicians with technocrats, it has failed terribly. And let's just say that technocrats that want to join county governments as deputy governors must understand that for now they have a very limited role and that they rise to prominence only if the governor is absent or if the office falls vacant.
Yes. But Dr. Kabau, do you think this was an oversight, especially on the makers of the Constitution?
It was not an oversight. You cannot provide executive power to two individuals. There must be one who has substantive executive power. So whether it is nationally, whether it is at the county level, and countries which tried that, especially at, nationally, Congo at independence, that's why one of the reasons that the government could not function, because it had an executive president and executive prime minister. Again, coming back to at the level of Nairobi County. So one of them has the one, and especially the one who is accountable to the people, and it is the governor. But again, building up on what Steve has mentioned about the pre-election pact, this was essentially to come up with a team that would sweep Nairobi, and they actually did that. So Sonko understood his weaknesses, and Jubilee also understood the weaknesses they had with Sonko, and they were able to fill them perfectly through the nomination of Igathe as his running mate. As I've mentioned, now we are at the reality check. What then if they and the president has come out saying that he really wants to create systems for Nairobi. We know, in as much as we say the county and the national government are distinct,
yes,
they are also interdependent. So this is something that probably we cannot ignore, that there are certain interests of the national government, and the national government probably would want harmony. If there's disharmony at this stage, it will create many other elements of disharmony. And being Nairobi with so many interests, it is something that can easily be exploited to sabotage business and many other agendas for development and service delivery.
But can a voter go to court to seek clarification because by arguing that I voted for them as a team, so then what happens to the dream I was sold for?
Actually, that's a law reform question because, okay, anybody may go to court, but for now they will not succeed because what the Constitution has spelled out is in plain language that your work is just to deputize the governor and assist him, and when he's away, you can act. But you rise to prominence, as I've said, when there's a vacancy in that office. Now, what the resignation, the lesson for learning in Nairobi, Nyeri, and in the last term, Machakos, because there was a time Machakos governor, Alfred Mutua, could not work with Bernard Kilu. What we learn is this. The deputy governor brings substantial political and legal dividend to the governor. It is true, when you're identifying a deputy, you may also want to consider, among other things, his ability to mobilize votes. So people vote for you knowing that I believe in this pair. So people vote for Governor Sonko through Igathe. So Igathe has a constituency, or at least the running mate, governor's running mate, is supposed to have a constituency, a critical constituency, or bring some technical competencies. Now that, if the deputy exists in such an abrupt manner, it exposes the governor on two ways. Number one, you may lose political support from that constituency that voted for you, knowing that you are a pair and you are a team. Number two, it raises the question about the manner of replacement. What I can see now, although the proposed bill, the Murkomen bill, which seeks to allow the county assembly, the governor, to nominate a new deputy and then subject to approval by the county assembly, which is similar to what Article 149 provides in case of a vacancy in the office of the deputy president. The president can nominate and allow parliament, and then parliament vets in order to approve. The gap in these two laws are this. There has to be some form of public accreditation. You know, unlike any other appointment, like the cabinet secretaries, which are being, it's basically at the discretion of the president. The election of the deputy governor is at the ballot. So this is someone who was elected at the ballot. If he vacates office, replacement is through appointive process. There's a critical gap there. We may want to deliberate further and decide, should we make the position of the deputy governor purely appointive, just like the rest of the cabinet at the county level, or just like the rest of the cabinet at the national level? Should we make the position of deputy president and deputy governor appointive? If they are elective, what is the historical justification for requiring that the running mate, the deputy governor, be elected alongside the governor? Is it for the nuisance value? Or is it just for someone's amusement, for convenience, or there's some hidden, unspecified significance? If there is some significance, we must capture that significance, and we must debate and agonize how to replace that deputy should there be an abrupt resignation such as this. Because I think what the framers of the Constitution did with regard to the deputy president, it was a convenience provision. Well, if a deputy resigns, let the president be given an opportunity to nominate with approval. They did not interrogate with a view of even renovating that provision to tell us if this deputy is elected at the ballot, ideally he should be replaced at the ballot. But the challenge of subjecting only one part of the pair to the election is what I think may have led us to believe that let's just nominate. So what I'm saying is this: let Kenyans debate, interrogate, and if need there be, renovate the law. So insofar as the manner of appointment of deputies are concerned, if we find that there's an irreconcilable difference or some internal disharmony that may not be cured through legislation, then one way to go about it would be to amend the law to require governors to be elected without necessarily deputies, but as they compose the cabinet, be allowed then to appoint a deputy who may then be vetted. I think these are issues that now must be interrogated as we go forward.
Do you agree, Dr. Kabau, bearing in mind that Elgeyo Marakwet Senator Kipchumba Murkomen is also in the process of drafting a bill to try and solve these questions that we have over the situation in an event where a deputy governor resigns? What happens?
Yes, I largely agree with Steve, because there's, and I've also had a look at Murkomen's bill, which of course, as Steve has explained, is built around the governor nominating somebody who is again approved by a simple majority of the MCAs. But in essence, as Steve was explaining, there's this aspect of Kenyans going to elections and electing somebody, and there's an element of accountability. Elected officials are expected. Direct elections are built around accountability.
Yes.
Then when he's replaced by somebody who is appointed, accountability is to the person who has appointed, not to the people. So there's that element, and that's what Steve seems to be concerned with. Probably we need to revisit and interrogate why, because we used to have an appointed vice president, why we also thought of having an elected vice president. But it was, again, avoiding political manipulations, because that position was being so much manipulated and to attain certain political ends. So we probably need, at this point, as the debate is being done, to evaluate and see what works for this country, and what has greater value than the other. Because, again, if you allowed governors to do that, as they have been doing with the county executive committee members, my previous deputy governor would not have probably survived more than 1 year, because they began in a very good terms, because I come from Nyandarua. But after 1 year, he was even a portfolio which he had in lands ministry of the county was taken away. So he was just left there to just sit in office and read a newspaper. So we probably have begun with Nairobi, but we are likely to face many other problems.
There will be a ripple effect in other counties.
Yes, certainly.
So then how do we fix it?
In fact, in my own opinion, I said the other time, is that because governors focused more on getting deputies who are politicians, who would bring in votes. And I thought probably this time there was tendency to get non-politicians, executives, as happened in Nairobi. But it seems, again, it is not working.
Seemingly backfired on our faces.
You've raised an important question. Because I had granted, in the absence of judicial interpretation, any law that seeks to provide an amendment to the County Governments Act that seeks to provide for a mechanism of dealing with the lacuna is welcome. But I want to signify, especially to lawyers and people and legislators, you know, in terms of maintaining the structural integrity of the Constitution, you can see that you have two levels of government. You have the national government, county government. National government, the executive there, the president, has a running mate. The governor has a running mate in the county government. They are elected at the ballot, elected at the ballot. The president is allowed to establish, by the Constitution, a cabinet. The governor is allowed to establish his cabinet, the county executive committee members, through approval of parliament, through approval of county assemblies. The manner of replacement of the deputy president is through nomination and approval by parliament. The Constitution was silent on the manner of replacement of the deputy governor.
Yes.
To maintain the structural integrity of the Constitution, ideally, it would have been better to anchor the manner of replacement of the deputy governor in the Constitution. I say that with clarity of thought. But that does not mean the Murkomen bill is unconstitutional. What it does is that if you anchor the manner of replacement of the deputy governor in ordinary legislation, such as the County Governments Act, you not only miss an opportunity to maintain that structural integrity, but you also expose the office of the deputy governor to future political exigencies. It means it will become easier if the governor, there's a terrible fallout, there's now an incentive to frustrate the deputy to resignation. You know, unlike Igathe, who has resigned out of conviction, clarity of thought, and his own mind is saying that I can't work in this manner. You may have now the ripple effect where governors are now conspiring with MCAs, you know, to frustrate deputies to resignation with a view of replacing them. So you mentioned something about someone going to court.
Yes.
I would like the courts to clarify to us the value addition of the deputy governor being required to be the running mate. Because if there is some significance, then you may find out that actually it may be necessary to find a mechanism of replacing the deputy governor at the ballot. I don't know the mechanism, but it may be necessary to find one. Or in the alternative, it may be optional for a governor to have a running mate as a deputy. If it is optional, then it makes replacement easy through appointive. You get?
Yes.
Because it says, if you believe that you are a strong candidate, you can run alone. You can run alone after election, appoint a deputy. But if you believe you need someone to a pre-negotiated settlement, a pre-election pact to boost your chances of election, then you may nominate. So I think a judicial interpretation may make it optional to have running mates for both president and governors. If it is optional, then it is easy to see the justification of replacement through nomination or appointment. You get? So for now, these are the nuances around the law that require serious interrogation, and I think the law should be developed as we go through innovative interpretation, not convenience legislation as such.
All right, but right now, this particular stalemate, Dr. Kabau, seemingly there's not much work going on at the county government because everyone is trying to resolve this, from the Speaker of the County Assembly, who's part of the entourage that is expected to sit down with these two and try and reconcile them. For a voter who hopes that development projects and, of course, administration roles would go on, what does this mean for them? Are they getting a raw deal?
Certainly. Provision of services is going to be affected. Creation, as we said, we are at the point of establishing a new government. So systems that were to be established are going to be affected. But some things are inevitable. Holders of office can resign, can also leave office by other means. In my view, if Igathe feels that their difference is irreconcilable, I think it would even be better for the Nairobians that he sticks to resigning as opposed to sabotaging or lack of harmony in the government. It would be better somebody comes in. Of course, there's already that attempt. What is important is probably to hasten that bill. Rather than court answering that question would not answer it appropriately. The best way is legislation. But again, I want to revisit something Steve has mentioned about why probably there was that need to have an elected deputy who is elected alongside either the president or the governor. It could also be tied to those aspects of succession. And then also the fact that subjecting constituents, whether it is nationally or at county level, to too many elections is not probably good for the economy, for service delivery, for governance, etc. And they thought probably that in case the governor is no longer unable to serve, whether by resignation or by death, the person who takes over is a person people have trust in and a person they have participated in electing. Because if it is appointed, he can again even manipulate the systems to get back to that position. As I said, probably it is a time to debate such issues and look at what really speaks to the aspirations and the needs of Kenyans. But whichever the system might have its own merits, etc.
No, I agree with Dr. Kabau on one issue. So this issue of political stability, maintenance of stability is also very important, and is an important constitutional edict, because the succession of office within the 5 years, it's unlikely that the office of the presidency or the office of the governor will be susceptible to an election in 5 years if the law says the deputy governor assumes office in case of a vacancy at the governor's office. The same way, if the deputy president assumes office in case of a vacancy at the presidency, that gives us some assurance that for 5 years we can focus on other issues of national development and continuity. I think that is a desirable approach. We should not tinker with that
So what legislators and theorists, constitutional lawyers and framers of the Constitution should come out and tell us is how to deal with the disharmony. The disharmony in the sense that you now have deputies that may significantly be weaker than was intended. You get? But if this is not reconcilable through further legislation, it could be reconcilable through further judicial interpretation. I think where we stand now, we can say it's beneficial that we have a law. I've just signified the challenges with locating that law in ordinary statute, but it's good that at least we have a law, and we keep on. I think now we should now find a way of guarding against manipulation of that law. Okay. Remember, one of the greatest reputation of our Kenyan politicians is manipulating the law for partisan benefit. It's difficult to manipulate the Constitution, but manipulating ordinary legislation, including bribing county assembly members to impeach the deputy governor, you know, occasion is resignation so that vacancy is created through hook or crook so that they appoint another. That cannot be underrated.
All right.
But we hope that more vigilance will go into this process as we get along.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here on KTN News Desk. It's an issue that we will continue to deliberate on, so I hope you will be back in studio to discuss the same and more. Steve Ogola is an advocate, and Dr. Tom Kabau is an advocate as well as a legal consultant. Once again, gentlemen, always a pleasure to have you here on KTN News Desk.